Hello, everyone. Welcome to this live stream from Savvy, where we are going to talk to Jerald O'Kennard from the Beverage Testing Institute all about their 2020 rum review. My name is Will Hookinga. I'm from American Rum Report, and as I said, I'm here with Jerald O'Kennard, who I will give a more formal introduction to in a moment. But first, Jerald, how are you doing today? And tell everyone, where are you joining us from?
I am in my lab in my basement in my
Awesome.
home in Chicago, Illinois.
The secret home basement lab,
That's right.
satellite location for the Beverage Testing Institute. That's awesome.
That's right.
Uh,
One of our many.
yeah. And so we're going to get started in just a minute. First, I want to go over the agenda with everyone real quick. I see we've got people joining already, someone from Tampa. Over there, if you look to the right of your screen, you'll see a chat window. You can go ahead and let us know where you're joining from. Feel free to use the chat for anything you want to say. Tell us how we're doing. But if you have a question for Jerald, there's a question box that you'll see at the bottom. So anytime something occurs to you, go ahead, type it in there. We're going to reserve some time at the end of this, about the last 15, 20 minutes or so for Q&A, but you can go ahead and send us any questions as they occur to you, and they'll be right down there in that question box. So also, we would love for you to share this event with your friends. Invite anyone you want to join. There's a share button at the top, so you can share it to Facebook, Twitter. Send the link directly to your friends. Tell them to hop on, join, come hang out with us. All right, we've got Russell from Oakland. We've got Kim from St. John, Federico, Seattle by way of Puerto Rico. So Jerald, let's go ahead and talk about you. I know you're currently the executive director at Beverage Testing Institute.
Mhm.
You've been there for over 20 years, I believe.
That's right.
Analyzed over 75,000 wines, beers, and spirits. I couldn't believe that number when I first saw it. I know you've trained hundreds of people in the hospitality and drink space, worked with companies like Diageo, Bacardi, Campari, Beam-Suntory. So that's extensive experience, obviously. Can you tell everyone a bit about your role at Beverage Testing Institute and also just what BTI is all about?
I'd be delighted, Will. Thank you. And thank you for having me. It's a great privilege to be here speaking with everyone.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so, yes, the Beverage Testing Institute has been around since 1981.
Okay.
It started out as America's first wine competition, international wine competition. It was started in New York. And they did the competitions both in New York City at the World Trade Center and the Windows of the World space, the restaurant on top.
Oh,
and
wow.
then they would alternate between New York and San Francisco. So the founder of our company did that for a number of years in the 80s and then moved to Chicago to become the wine writer for the Chicago Tribune in the late 80s and moved the business with him here to Chicago. And we've been here ever since. Since that time, we've added reviews for spirits, which we're going to talk about today, and beer. So we run international wine, beer, and spirits competitions, the oldest of their kind here in the U.S. And that is, one part of our business is producing those reviews for wines, beers, and spirits for producers who choose to enter those reviews. And then we publish the results of those reviews on our publication, tastings.com. And we also license that content to other publications and other apps and other forms of digital information, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, sure.
So that's one part of our business. The other part of the business was started when I joined in 2000, which is our consulting division, where we take all of that knowledge, resource, data, and we apply it to solve problems for suppliers, sometimes for governments. We do a number of projects, developmental, new liquids, marketing, testing claims. Last year we did a consumer claims test, a national one. That was our first national consumer test, sort of like a Pepsi challenge, but with alcohol.
Interesting.
We're very busy in that testing space right now. And we're still open for business. We're still, doing our reviews and our consulting work. So fortunately, knock on wood, that there are still people that need our help, and we're glad to help them.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know. Just before we went live, you and I were talking a little bit, and you said that you guys have been, as busy as ever over there. So
yeah, I thought I was going to get a break, but not really.
Right.
I had a bunch of books I wanted to read. I'm a musician, so I wanted to record my album, but none of that seems to be happening. So, well, I guess it's a good problem to have.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the reasons I was so excited to talk to you about BTI's rum review is because, ever since I've been writing about rum for a few years now, but have been a consumer for longer than that. And one of the things that I always found to be challenging as a consumer was, you see so many different types of awards out there, especially with the growth of craft spirits over the past decade or so. It almost feels like anytime you find a new rum or whatever, everyone has some type of award they're displaying that they've won, which then the challenge for the consumer becomes like, okay, how do I figure out what these mean, or which of these are actual signals of quality? So one of the things that I've always tried to do is just learn as much as I can about the various competitions, tastings, awards that I see out there. And I always encourage people, now who are on my newsletter or who I talk to, if you see something about a medal, just always, usually if you research the competition or the panel, you can find information about their methodology, how these are done, who the experts are that they're talking to. And so that's why I was really excited for you to come on, because I knew this would be a chance for us to talk all about that with BTI and really find out, what sets it apart. So I'm curious to start there. What makes BTI different from other tasting competitions?
That's a great question. And certainly since we started in 81 and in 94 with spirits competitions, there's been a huge number of increase in the amount of competitions and those kind of things that are out there. So I'm with you in terms of wanting to understand what is behind the medal and what's behind the score. So for us, it comes from our history with the starting the wine competition and working with Cornell University back in the early 80s to establish a methodology that had, while it is a sensory science, and so it is a matter of subjectivity in terms of people's preferences and tastes, but we wanted to have as much scientific rigor as possible. So that was always the mission from the beginning, is to structure it so it's not what I consider to be a weekend kind of affair where we have hundreds of judges and thousands of products, and it's kind of more of a social gathering, and people are tasting way too many products, for instance, and getting palate fatigue. And there's a lot of issues with the way the reviews and competitions are done. Our approach is different. It's based off of small panels of experts that taste not a lot of products in a given day. So for spirits, we don't taste more than 15 to 20 at the maximum, depending on the ABV of the products per day.
Okay, wow.
It's a small panel of between 3 and 5 panelists that have been trained as sensory analysts using our methodology and using our proprietary software. So, we have a detailed methodology. It's based on the quartermaster scale, which was developed here in Chicago after World War II and was used by the Army in terms of rating preferences. So our system is based off of more or less objective criteria for benchmarking. What we do is we ask everyone who participates as a panelist to be someone who is in the trade, who is a buyer, or who has expertise with categories. We like buyers because they're really at the pointy end of the market. They are the ones that are touched by suppliers who are presenting new products. They have to create lists and sell those products to consumers, so they kind of get feedback from both ends. And we find that with their skills and further training, that they really make very consistent and repeatable judgments in the context of blind tasting. So everything we do is single blind tasted, sometimes double blind tasted, depending on the project. And we really are using benchmark criteria. So for instance, if a given category is being tasted, let's say it's unaged rum, white rum, we'll ask everyone to really, before they come to us, to make sure that they have their benchmarks in order in terms of what they consider to be the best example of that particular category. And then our scoring part of our software asks them to say, first of all, is it a commercially sound product? And from there, how would you compare it to the best examples of its category? And we have a scale that does that. We don't get involved in points and adding up points for aroma or body or finish or color, all that kind of stuff that a lot of other folks do. What we're really interested in looking at the totality of the product and how does that totality of that experience compare to the best examples. And then once we've done that, let's break down the aromas and the flavors and in minute detail, as you'll see in some of our reviews. We're really trying to accurately as we can describe what these products are so that people know, what the flavors that they're getting involved are, what are some of the applications for those products based on their flavors and their structure, and really give people a complete picture of what these products are from an objective standpoint. We do these reviews. We're paid to do them by the suppliers, but it's a level playing field. We taste it blind. We don't know. The judges do not know, what the brands are. They only know the categories. For spirits, they do not know the country. They do not know the price. They just know the category, and they perform their work with just that knowledge using those benchmarking concepts I explained. And once the panel is done with their work, for a given flight, the moderator of the panel will collect the tasting notes from each of the panelists and go round robin and kind of construct the tasting note, the descriptor of the product from the group, announcements basically of what each person is getting. Their scores are already locked in the machine, so those don't change. And then we go to the next flight and the next flight. And invariably, if a product rises sort of to the top, if one or more panelists give it high marks, we take that product, we bring it back to what we call a merit round, where we evaluate that product a second time just to make sure that, okay, is this really a 90+ point product? Is this a gold medal product? And if so, where does it fall in that spectrum of that scale? Or perhaps we, after taking a second look at it, it's very, let's say it's a high 80s kind of high silver sort of product, very good, but not excellent. So we always make sure that we taste the best products twice so that we're certain. So that's built into our methodology too. And then after that, the panel gets a reveal of the cart of products for the day, and we email them their tasting notes and their descriptors and everything that they produce for that day so that they have it for their records. And, there's a lot of transparency in terms of that. We also provide the panelists the contact information that day for all of the people that entered, whether it's the brand or the marketing agency, the importer, who it might be, who sent it into us. So we try to stimulate commerce sort of behind the scenes after the tasting. If people say, hey, what was that? I've never had that before. We'll give them the contact information so they can connect with that particular supplier and perhaps even bring it into their establishments. As I said, many of them are buyers. So they're looking to take advantage of our platform to both, increase their skills and their tasting ability and the ability to describe products well as finding things that aren't in this market, because we see a lot of things that aren't in the Chicago market, sometimes not even in the national market, and they have the first look at it. So it's an opportunity for them to really get an intimate experience with the brand, and that's part of the service that we provide to those suppliers.
That's so fascinating how much goes into that. And I'm guessing this is a process that has really evolved over the years and sounds like it continues to evolve. I mean, incorporating software and everything that's involved there. I think something else that jumps out to me that's interesting. And I want to say a quick hello to everyone. We got Kevin coming in from Atlanta, Orlando, Matt in Toronto, Linda in NYC, Brian in Chicago. Dave, I know Dave McConnell from Portland, Maine. That's Dave founded a distillery up there called 3 of Strong Spirits. It's doing some interesting stuff. We got, hey Dave.
Super.
Like I said, if you have questions as Jerald's talking about all this, you'll see a question box area to click in the bottom center of the screen. Put your questions there. We'll do a Q&A in the last 20 minutes. But Jerald, I want to go back. So, it sounds like there's multiple sides to this. So obviously you have the competition side, these sort of awards that are handed out to products that score high enough after this thorough review process. But you also have the side of it where anyone who comes to BTI to be tested, whether they score highly enough or not to medal, it sounds like you're providing them with sort of this detailed feedback from people on the panel who, as you said, is made up of buyers, professionals in the industry, and that sort of thing. So what does the conversation look like when you give that information back to the brands? How do they use that?
Great question. So we publish for spirits. The way we structure our reviews is every month there's a different category of spirit that we review, also different category of wine or beer too. So we have this kind of rolling schedule, and that's how we're able to taste such smaller amounts than, let's say, a competition would, because we divide it up throughout the year instead of trying to do it in a weekend or a few days during a week. So in that process, we have a deadline that's the beginning of the month, and then for spirits, we give ourselves 60 days. So in 2 months, the first of that month or the closest business day to that, we'll actually publish those results, and we'll send those results out to the entrants. As I said, some of them are the brands themselves, some of them are importers, some of them are marketing agencies for some of the larger brands. We'll send them the results, and then historically, if they're good results, the people will use them, and they'll use them in their sales materials and their websites, and we have logos and we have point of sale material that they can use to supplement that. Sometimes people will do press releases, and if the results aren't so good, let's say that there are things that are not recommended, we also send them that feedback from the panel to tell them exactly why it wasn't recommended, and if there's flaws and things of that nature, distillation, fermentation issues, we will address that in those notes. Also, backing up a little bit, just in terms of methodology, we ask for 2 bottles of each product, so that if there is an issue, let's say it's a cork enclosure rum, and it's not that common to have spirits that are corked, but I have a whole closet full of them that I could show the world someday. But we do.
It happens.
It happens, and we use it for training purposes. I could talk about that too. But so if there's a problem with the first sample, in other words, we have a second sample to rely on and to test that. So yes, so we do provide that panel feedback, and that's a really important part of the process, so that our mission is to help brands become better. That's BTI's mission, to take all of this knowledge, to take all the resources that we have, the archive that we have of thousands of spirits, and help brands become better as best as they can be.
Right. Yeah, I think, anytime there's sort of results of a competition or medals that are published, I think sometimes people can misconstrue it as the organization went out there and tried everything, and this is the results of saying, here's the best of everything on the market. That's not what this is, and that's not what you guys are positioning it as. You're saying, when you publish these reviews, here are in several different categories, here are the products that scored the highest according to our methodology. Is that a correct way of putting it?
That's right. And we also publish, as I said, we publish those for a set period of time. So our reviews have a shelf life. So if you go to tastings.com, we're only going to show the last 3 years of reviews. And the reason for that is because we have found over our history that brand compositions, whether it's the raw materials, sometimes it's even the distillery that they're produced at, changes. So we always like to publish the most current as possible information that we have. So we only can go back on the Tastings website, tastings.com, 3 years, and that's very intentional. So within that, the goal of the tastings.com site is to provide a general buying guide for consumers. It's completely free. People can search as they will all the different categories of wines, beers, and spirits, and they'll see the things that we have reviewed. And to your point, it's an opt-in proposition. So we are constantly letting brands around the world know through MailChimp and phone calls and emails, what the opportunities are each month, what are the categories we're tasting, when they'll be published, and it's up to them if they would choose to enter or not. So not everyone enters every year, but over the course of 3 years, we do see a good range, certainly in the spirits of the players that are out there. And we're always interested in finding, the exceptional products, the exceptional values. We have a Best Buy award that we give out to things that score high and have a certain price point or below, and that's fun. We always want to find things that are great, and hopefully things that are great that are quite affordable. That's even better.
Right. Absolutely. And for everyone who's here, you'll notice a button at the bottom that says BTI methodology. So Jerald just went into great detail about that. But if you click there, you can see the section on BTI's website that goes in depth on the methodology. And before we dive into actually going through the categories of rum that you guys reviewed recently, I want to take a look at sort of how the scoring works. So I'm going to make this slide big enough for everyone to see. And Jerald, can you just take us through sort of the different tiers of scoring and how the medals work and everything like that?
Certainly, yes. So coming from our history of a competition, we use medals, and we use a medal system that you have here from no medal all the way up to a platinum medal, which for some other systems it would be the equivalent of a double gold.
Okay.
So for us, points translate into medals, so that you could have multiple gold medal winners. It's not an Olympic competition, and the feeling and the philosophy behind that is that we're trying to establish quality levels. We're using benchmarking to do so. You could have two products that are 91 points within the same, review. It's completely possible, and it happens all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So why not let people know that those are both gold medal products, as opposed to saying, oh, there's only one gold medal this year, that's it. So we're the innovators in terms of that. Other competitions have sort of borrowed that same philosophy and moved away from Olympic style to more of a quality metric.